Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья.
Hello, dear friends. Maybe, as for my modesty, I will tell a couple of words because we are a tobacco company and $1 billion includes excise, in fact. But in fact, this is the revenue, trade revenue of the enterprise, which I managed from the financial point of view. It really happened. Still, but this is just for your consideration. It seems to be awful, and the billion is the billion. It is like that, but it's not that scary as it looks like first. So I have a prompt here, not to go away from the topic for too long, so let us move along the text. For instance, I'd like to say a couple of words to bring this discussion about the relationship of the procurement function with the finance. I will be speaking about the international company. The international company where I'm working for a long time, and local aspects, the ways of functioning of the local smaller companies. I will never deal with them. So what else I'd like to say? The functions of the procurement is bilateral, especially in the international companies. This is the only function which can directly be controlling and supplying services for the same internal customers, and it is important. This is a very fragile balance, and lots of people who faced it, they will understand what I'm speaking about. Still, the function of the procurement in our context is not separate from by the geography or the subordination from its internal clients. As well, otherwise we could hide behind the geography or the subordination, but still the interaction with their internal clients at the procurement function, what comes in our texts, it's directly facing process, and it is important. So when you control someone, it irritates the one you control, whether you want it or not. Still, of course, no one will tell you that directly, but you need to understand that because this is an inseparable part of your interaction. Years ago, I haven't heard such conversations, and I will tell you why. But the typical conversation years ago would be, for instance, when you take the lighters, you are buying them for half a year. It's a usual marketing because people are very impatient and it is understandable. But as for the procurement function, they would say, you changed the brief the day before yesterday. What do you want from us? This discussion took place rather often. Get rid of it. Maybe there are also only two parameters, professionalism, in my opinion, and the prevailing of the support of business over the control. As the function of the procurement exists not to control, in fact, but to support the business, and it should prevail over the control in my understanding. I will tell you the case later. So what's important about that? If we speak about modern businesses, bigger businesses, international businesses, in my opinion, the self-censorship is always more efficient than just censorship. And when you explain your employees very comprehensible rules, there won't be too many of them. They would definitely stick to all the regulations. Let's move on. If you have a global company, if your company is global, but still you have the matrix structure, this is our case, and still you're trying to solve the issues with the help of consensus, then your life won't be that easy. I mean the interaction of the procurement function with the internal customers. And I will tell you a story, a funny one, as I think. Once we came to the training and we found a very promoted and clever coach, and maybe he knew something about our corporate culture, And he gave us an exercise which would, I would say, be very tricky. I will tell you why. He just put six of us in each team. He put us face to face, 3-3. So we put those fingers out, and he put us a bamboo fishing rod, and we had three teams. So he said, you need only to put this fishing rod on the floor. But if you just uh, uh, don't touch the rod in the process, you should begin with the very beginning. So everybody is afraid. Everybody is just shouting, okay, let us begin. Let us put it to the floor, but it is going up. It is not going down. Instead of going down, because everybody is afraid not to touch the rod, as it was the condition. This is the hyper responsibility. Instead of the result, we are concentrated on the not of the primary requirement. The primary requirement was to put the fishing rod down. And I will tell you why this example is relevant or concerns the speech topic. A different similar case is when the representative of the legal function is putting 12 comments for the contract, 12 comments to the contract, and I'm asking my employee, I said, well, would you tell me each of your comments separately or all the 12 together? Don't they allow us to award the contract? No, they do allow that. But why did you mention those 12 comments then? Just to show how you want to support the fishing rod? So instead of achieving the result quickly and to award a contract and to buy what we need without huge risks, without substantial risks for the business of the company, we will just polish the text. Unfortunately, it happens in our life and rather often. Formal and precisely reflected role distribution, as we have it in the function which is managing the process altogether, takes the results of the work. There is the function which is responsible for the performance of the appointed task. There is the and there is someone you need to just to make aware. This formalization really helps a lot. The global and local aspects. Again, you can find that in any international business. In my opinion, it's rather important. It impacts our daily life. What's prevailing, the global or the local, this is the question of faith. We don't have a scientific recipe what should prevail, in fact. Moreover, this is the dynamic balance. Sometimes we have global, sometimes we have local prevailing. You can just take the product itself. In FMCG, right? Where the product is maybe the most important what we have in the world. So this product can be totally standardized all over the world, or there are certain companies and businesses where it's totally localized. So we don't have the unified recipe about that because the consumer is the most important what we have. Or you can take an example of lease versus buy. For long years, lots of corporations loved leasing so much. They loved it instead of buying. But when they implemented the International Standard of Accountability number 16, it was so reporting number 16, it was so complicated that they just stopped loving leasing. And what seemed to be panacea of all of the discussions, everybody told us how nice it is to lease. Now they say it's not that nice, though only the rules of accounting changed. And we need to understand that there can be bigger companies with huge consumption of what we're speaking, for instance, motor cars, with a nice and powerful cash flows, which is free. And there can be vice versa, the opposite. So maybe there are two poles of the whole spectrum of possible businesses we are speaking about. And for them, either to lease or to buy is not compulsory a universal solution. And in the context of the global and local interactions, I need to mention that sometimes the success of the local procurement can lead to jealousy at the local functions. Moreover, there can be that the interaction of the local procurement function with some local supplier is so long and well developed, and we get such nice discounts at the local market that it does not work that much when the global headquarters of the supplier gets to know through our global about those wonderful conditions we have in the local market, because it's a kind of a partisan work at the level of their cooperation. So this is the aspect in the cooperation with the global and local functions of procurement. Standardization of the procurement is also topic connected with the globalization. There are catalogs in different companies. There are some cases when the catalog is not that big, but you cannot get beyond it. For instance, I used to work at Coca-Cola Export Corporation, and trade equipment was severely standardized in that company. There can be catalogs which are much wider, but you can get out of them with easiness. So it is organized in a different way. And again, we don't have a universal recipe, we don't have a panacea, but there should be some balance where you should stick to, because any edge solution does not lead to the profit of the business. And this is the primary goal, the most important goal. And the consequence of the excessive globalization or standardization, they exist. But to quantify them, that is, to find out and to show separate effect, mostly is totally impossible. You may not even feel the consequences of your solutions and decisions to this or that side, either in globalization or in standardization. And here we are coming closer to the more fundamental topic, which is in the name of the topic of this page. The functions of the procurement and the finances as it is. Yes, really. We have several used ways which allow us to conduct discussion and to take a decision in a structured way. The easiest is what we see in our revenues and losses. What's our budget? We need to buy this many units of the raw materials or marketing services, and what it can lead to in our revenues and losses is the expense division. The return on investment is not the obvious thing. Maybe we could mention some of the key accounts and listing fees when we pay for the place on the shelf. And if we don't pay, then what's our position in this or that key customer? How much we lose in the sales, or how much do we gain? This question is not that easy to digitalize, to have some quantitative indicators, because we have certain assumptions there in this case. There's no present value because it is used, it can be used. I even used it because when we were speaking about payments, the terms we are considering prepayment, post-payment, how many days, because whether you want it or not, the longer is your term of payment, the higher is the price and the worse is the quality. Not instantly, maybe you may not even mention it or notice it instantly. Sometimes it's not that easy to measure, but still, from the rational point of view, from the sanity point of view, the later you pay, the worse are the conditions for your supplier, and maybe the price will be higher sooner or later, or the quality of the product you're buying will be worsening gradually. And again, it's not that easy to be measured. And here, maybe we need to take a step back and try to remember some quantum physics. where, as we know, either a tool or the experiment impact the phenomena. The simplest comparison, the terms of the payment. We wanted to make, for instance, not 30 but 60 days, and we achieved that. But the impact of this change onto what we are buying, or again the price or the quality of what we are buying, exists. But it's not that easy to measure. And this is an important issue because we're changing something in our activities, and we change the activity itself. We change what we are buying, either in the price or in the quality. Sometimes it happens, and very often I can see it in some discussions. I look at the combustion of heptane. This chemical reaction has 2,300 elementary reactions within itself. So to calculate it theoretically, you need to know the parameters of 2,300 elementary reactions. That's physics of combustion, explosion, and shock waves. You know the formula, you have the system of equations, but you cannot calculate it because you don't have the input data. What I mean that the complicated ways of calculations, of decision making, rather often they don't allow you to use them in life practically without having either certain speculative parameter in the essence of the calculations, or maybe just have lack of the input data. I'll name an example. The present value, net present value, has the discount rate. And there is the whole science how to measure the discount rate. And this is the most complicated and sensitive, the key parameter of those calculations. A separate topic, how we can appoint the discount. It should be proportionate to the risk. There is a structured way how to calculate it. Still, this is the most subjective and speculative element in the calculation of the present value. And if, again, we speak about the prepayment in comparison with the post-payment, it defines everything. All of the rest figures are known, but as for the discount rate, it can be speculated. And again, it's my own personal opinion. Or, for instance, maybe what's closer to you about the function of payment, there is such a notion as economic order quantity. So it's the optimal amount of order. So we multiply, we divide, and this is how we look at the optimal size. It doesn't matter how we calculate it, but here we have the price or the prime cost of the order placement. And we take the revenues and the losses, the price of the telephone calls, and so on. Still, we ignore such a simple case that one way of losses and expenses is not permanent in the endless flow of time. Because coming simpler to that, if I place the order 3 times a day, or I place an order once a quarter, the size of the procurement function, as for the number of people working, will change as well. This formula has the same effect and totally ignores it, because it assumes that the price of the order is permanent, but it's not constant. And the same formula appeals to the prime cost of the storage of the orders. And again, from the perspective of the sanity, maybe we do understand that the bigger batches we buy, the higher is the risk to utilize the materials which can become out. Either they might eat them, or the packaging changes, whatever. You name it. But this parameter then is can have the probability changes, and of course, it's not that permanent as well. So from the academic point of view, rather primitive approach, we have the formula, but it cannot be applied. Either you deceive yourselves, because again, two key parameters in this formula want to be permanent, but they're not constant. Why did I mean all of that? Sanity and the order of figures. Again, coming back to the present value, net present value, and there is a different approach which is considered to be academically incorrect, so-called payback. When I invested $100 and my cash will come back to me in how long? If it comes to me in 15 years, maybe even the positive net present value won't make me that convinced that the project is good. But if my payback is 3 months, then maybe I should implement this project. Though, again, payback is the fundamentally, economically, is totally not correct. But it is simple, it's understandable, comprehensive, and it's easier to be tangible. Again, knowing that the discount rate in the net present value is the indicator which can be speculated. As for the fraud, well, I couldn't find it, but still, there is a funny story. It used to happen long ago. Once in one automotive company where I used to work, the global function was of procurement. The man was sitting in Zurich and he had 10 fake companies which were organized by his relatives and friends. He always had a tender. One of the firms always accidentally won, but all of them belonged to him. And this was the way which was used in different countries. It's not that new. It used to exist long ago. And again, the scientific approach was done, but from the point of the essence, it was ugly. And the last point I'd like to mention just a bit about coronavirus and the crisis. First of all, what's important? It's important to focus upon having a nice plan beforehand. The preliminary plan how to respond to the crisis, because to foresee the crisis which we faced was not that possible. Though the plan of interaction with the crisis helps a lot. It's a useful exercise to provide and to reconsider it, and moreover to train yourself in it. But one more important moment, when you're in the Olympics, there was such an exercise, the leap from the place, from the place where you stand. So it was an opportunity to organize instantly and to make free the whole energy without a run. So it is the standing jump or standing dive, which is important in the crisis situation. Coronavirus, like any crisis, allows us to get rid the things which are not important. There's a fable. Once I used to work in the oil company, and its owner was Mr. Khodorkovsky. And when the oil price went down to $8 a barrel, he said very important words. He said, "Now I know what's the real prime cost of oil." Because when you're in the absolute crisis situation and you don't have the way out, you will cut out everything you can get rid of. And it's very useful to go through this crisis to get rid of the layers. You remember that exercise with the fishing rod, which we couldn't put on the floor because nobody could afford himself or herself to let the team down. Again, the crisis situation allows to neglect this feeling when we are too responsible about the phenomena which are not that necessary. And in the crisis situation, we are giving more power to the simple employees and workers. We delegate much more than we used to delegate when there was no crisis. standardization begins to flourish more because really simplifies our business. We combine procurement from several countries together to one supplier, and we get better conditions from this supplier. And again, we use the opportunities of the market and we prolong the terms of payment because the supplier begins to treat us more gently. So that's it, what I wanted to tell you. Thank you so much, Oleksiy. There are questions. The topic is interesting, so let us have a seat for a couple of minutes. The question is from our participants. The first question, Oleksiy, hello, what do you think? Can the company create its strategy of cash flow management and the gap compensation with the help of the increase of the creditor's loan? Well, yes, thank you. That's what I was speaking about. Now the market has become more flexible. So I'm affiliating to the real activity of ours. We really prolonged the payment terms for our suppliers because now they're perceiving it much simpler and easier than before the crisis. Of course, this is the dream for any producer or manufacturer or any business to delegate the whole working capital onto the suppliers. Well, of course, we do that, and the suppliers don't like it. Of course, they don't. So I already said that about our experiment when your tool, your action impacts the phenomenon itself. We really don't know how it does it. We try to keep everything under control. The price is not going up, the product is not replaced, but in the long term perspective, God knows how it will be working, right? Well, it's not that easy to assume. They absorb this variance, I would say, into themselves. All of them do, and totally with high readiness. Maybe they will try to get some compensation in this or that way. On the other hand, the function of procurement exists like that to develop different options. Yes, sure, and to conduct negotiations. Thank you so much. So there are certain risks. We need to calculate them, and this approach is necessary to be developed and used as much as we can. Yes, this is the standard way. No one invented it. Just it is a very convenient opportunity for us. Yes, as a procurer, as a buyer, as a customer. The second question, could you mention an example how the delay impacts the quality? Because if the quality is not enough, it can be found out before you pay. And here are different factors, certain claims about the quality, replacement, and then the contractor has more losses. Well, of course, it's naturally. No one will instantly do anything bad for you. But which plastic do they need? You don't know that because we are buying lots of trading equipment. I'm just theorizing. I'm considering that I'm a small business and the bigger business is coming up to me and says, we will pay you not in a month, but in 2 months or in 3. Yes, or in 3. I will cry, I will weep. Well, I won't weep, of course. I will try to tolerate that, but to sell. But how can I compensate that at least a bit? I wouldn't do that with the price, it's too obvious. But as for the quality, it's not that easy to prove. You cannot see that instantly, yes. No one is that foolish. Everything will look nicely, but you need eye and eye for that. So, the functions of the procurement and whatever is tangible, tobacco, for instance, we buy lots of things. There, the control of quality, the quality check, it needs constant watching. They will try to save as well because they don't have any other way out, or they can lose the revenues, which is also possible. Maybe they can tolerate that. Nobody knows. Yes, the situation can be different, and we don't have universal advices. We need to try to communicate, to calculate. There should be an open dialogue. Yes, the discussion with with the supplier. It is so important in the function of procurements. It's not the maths, it's not mechanics. This is cooperation with the people you should feel, whether you push them up till the end or you may do that more. We found the optimal price, the optimal conditions. Yes, because naturally we are trying to achieve the best conditions for ourselves. We're trying to get the long-term cooperation. We are not interested to change the supplier all the time. So to feel the balance that it is tolerable by the supplier and nice for us as well. And we shouldn't move on. Yes, we can, sure. And here I'd like to ask a question, which will be the last one, considering what you've said, that the procurement is not the maths, but more about the cooperation with people, and lots of trends witness that this is how we develop the competences of the buyers. There won't be that much of the function which can be put into the artificial intelligence, into the robotization, maths, transactions, and so on. So my question is connected with the next point. Would you please tell when the procurement is speaking the same language with you, the financial language, when they know to calculate, when they understand the figures, when they calculate those figures, this approach is more productive as for the interaction with the finance. All the procurers don't need to know that, and it's more than enough for you to come to you as the colleague within the cross-functional work, for you to do all the necessary bits to calculate the whole case, to calculate the ad hoc projects which are necessary. Well, it depends. I would still emphasize that we don't calculate that much. Not really. I had rather hot discussions with key accounts long ago. They are not in Ukraine and not in Romania. Prepayment in comparison with post payment, net present value had to be calculated. And those people, my colleagues from key accounts, understood the calculation of net present value. It is just a formula in Excel. It's not that complicated. But as for the mutual understanding, a finance over finance, it's more than enough. We don't have any rocket science. We don't provide complicated calculations. Maybe I forgot to mention it can be done in the vehicles, in the machinery, the total cost of ownership. It should be calculated. Those are the main assets, yes. The total cost of ownership is calculated rather transparently because the car, the vehicle, is the most comprehensive example. Any employee could understand that. Would it be car fleet or the procurement function? It's a fixed asset. Lease versus buy more complicated, but again, I said that the fashion changed. Now it's fashionable to buy than to lease, though it was brought because the accounting changed only. I do remember how we had to transfer our automobile park onto the leasing. Yes, we had such a case and we had to calculate it. Thank you so much, Oleksiy. It was so interesting and it was so useful for our colleagues. Thank you that joined us, and we are staying in touch with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.